Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Bill. This video is going to be the continuation of the War Magic, the Battlefield Magic videos, where we go over the lower level spells and contemplate if they are useful as is in a battlefield or how you can make them useful in a battlefield situation, how that would affect a medieval battle, ship combat, so on and so forth. So as we dive in deeper, we have now made it to the third level arcane spells. So things are starting to get very interesting because in the third level arcane spells, there's the very first battlefield spell that is really devastating, and that's Fireball. And it's mostly devastating because the area effect and the range at which you can shoot it. There are a few lower level spells that give you the same range, but aren't as destructive as far as damage you can deal out to a military force. The first one that comes to mind is Entangle. Entangle can be shot at the range that a Fireball can. So, let's dive in. The first spell on the list is Dispel Magic. If you know you have spell effects that the enemy is going to be using or whatnot, and you want to limit the effectiveness of it, just cast it as an area spell where that force has to move through, target it into a valley. That all can add a good effect. If you see a scout flying overhead, you could hit the scout with Dispel Magic. So individually, Dispel Magic's okay, but it can be very useful. Explosive Runes. This is great for setting up traps for military coming through. It'll do 6d6 damage when read. So, Protection. It's a 10-foot radius, 10 minutes per level. That can be useful if you're fighting things that have polarizing alignments: chaos, evil, good, law. Non-detection. That's great if you're trying to hide from your enemy and not allowing them to describe and whatnot. Protection from energy. Absorb 12 points per level of damage from one kind of energy. That'd be really good to put on a force that you're afraid is going to take lots of damage from fireballs, Melf's acid arrow, and stuff like that. I would throw that on your strike force or your cavalry, mostly. So I'd limit it that way because it'd be expensive. But I'd give them potions of that to start with, or give them once per week items that they can command and activate. Phantom Steed. Phantom Steed's real useful. Now you have a cavalry that doesn't have to have horses that have to be taken care of. It'll last 1 hour per level. At third level arcane, the lowest level wizard could be 5th level to cast. So you're looking at least 5 hours for one casting. If you do a higher level spellcaster, it could last a lot longer. So if you had a few spellcasters that just cast that 3 or 4 times, or they had a series of scrolls, you could pretty much equip your whole cavalry with horses that don't need to be fed or taken care of. You can also use that to move your army really quick. But I like the idea of cavalry better. Sepia Snake Sigil. Sigil. Creates text symbol that immobilizes reader. That could be very useful because unless that's a single target, that could affect a group in a battle. So let's look at that one. Sepia Smoke Signal. It's an object touched. So it's a little trap. That could be very good for trapping a container containing information and stuff, but it wouldn't be useful on a battlefield the way I was thinking. Sleet Storm hampers vision and movement. That can slow down a military. That'd definitely be useful. Sticking Cloud, nauseated vapors, 1 round per level. Let's see the area of Stinging Cloud. The range is 100 feet plus 10 feet per level, and the cloud spreads a 20-foot radius, 20 foot high. Duration 1 round. That could be useful to target sections of a military, but the problem is with the range, you have to be pretty close for a battlefield spell. Because it doesn't have the range of like a fireball where it's 400 feet plus 40 feet per caster level. So by the time you have fireball by this level, it is lowest level wizard that can get its 5, lowest level sorcerer that can get its 6. So 5 times 40, you're looking at another 200. You're looking at 600 feet for a single fireball. And that's just the range you can shoot it, and then its radius is 20-foot radius. So we go from Stinging Cloud to Summon Monster. Summon monsters aren't that useful, like I said before, but at this point, you can get a small elemental. Now it starts to become interesting. Now when you start getting other summon monsters, you can use it to get multiple elementals. So Summon Monster 3, I won't dismiss as quickly as I dismissed it at the other levels. Assuming you can gain control of them through a magical item. Say I give all my soldiers on the front lines not even all my soldiers, say I give half my soldiers on the front lines an item that allows them to summon an earth elemental. I tell them that the command that they need to tell the earth elemental in the elemental's language, which would be hilarious trying to teach that many people how to speak Terran, that the command they need to give them is to merge with the earth, go forward, and grab somebody's ankles and hold them in place, or try to merge them into the ground and let the ground do crushing damage to them. Both would be cruel and useful. If it's just holding them in place, well, now you have a section of your wall that's moving forward of your army, your shield wall, that can't move as a solid unit anymore. If it's pulling them in and crushing them, and you command it to do that for multiple turns, because I believe Summon Monster at 3rd level would last like 3 minutes, so that's like 30 rounds. If it's doing that multiple times, it could pretty much decimate a small section of military that probably won't be very powerful because it's the front lines. Most of the front lines usually were the mercenaries and stuff, at least the beginning of the front lines. Or they were the very experienced. If they're the very experienced, you're going to have issues anyways when you get the elemental close. So that'll be very interesting, and that could kind of change the tides with just a little item like that. So now we look into Arcane Sight. Magical auras become visible to you. Allows you to determine what's magical, what's not, who's carrying magical, who's using magic, so on and so forth. So that'd be useful. It wouldn't be great, but it'd be useful. Clear audience, clairvoyance, hear or see at a distance for 1 minute per level. That can be useful, especially for scouting or listening to commands that the enemy soldiers are given. Excuse me. Tongue, speak and understand any language. That can be useful if communication needs to be going on. But for a battlefield, not really. Now, if you were going into enemy's territory and you don't speak their language, Potions of Tongues, the tongue spell, would be very useful to you because you can then listen over to, say, their battle plan because you're up in the rafters. You could drink that and you could understand what they're saying. Deep Slumber puts 10 hit dice of creatures to sleep. That could probably take a small section of the army down. I wouldn't put that as like a number one spell to use, but hey, if you got like the elementals, if you had a few people in the front lines able to do this, say they tap the shields that are all asleep, the deep slumber shields that could effectively be used once per week. And I always pick once per week because that's the cheapest way to craft a repeated use item. So they tap the shield, and once per week it can put 10 hit dice of creatures to sleep that's looking at it. Well, most first lines of the combat, like I was saying earlier, is low level mercenaries. So you're looking at like first level conscripts. So you're looking at 1 hit dice at most. So you could take out 10 of those guys. You've just dropped a section of the wall. And you say you had every 4 of your guys with that's this section of wall, that section of wall, that section of wall, all going down, shield wall. So now you have access to be able to dispatch them how you wish. Heroism. Heroism's not great for a battlefield, but it is a good spell. Hold person. Not good because it's a single person. Rage. Rage is not good because it only wants single target. Suggestion. Now, let's go back to Rage. Rage is not good because it's single target, but Rage could be good if you're doing that to your own soldiers. You give them access, like I said, once per week, or a potion. They drink a potion, they begin Barbarian Rage. Well, they now have the benefits of Rage. So that could change a little bit of how combat goes, because a +2 to strength is still a +2 to strength. And for the normal commoners, that would be very useful. Suggestion won't be useful in a battlefield because it compels subject to follow stated course of action, unless you can get a hold of a commander and do that right before the battle starts. And then tell the commander what to tell his military. But even so, I think suggestion's more limiting than that. Daylight, 60-foot radius of bright light. If you want to blind your enemies, that would be great, especially at night. Drop a couple of those at night, and you've pretty much blinded everybody that was looking, not expecting that. And then those that were expecting that could take advantage for the rounds they were blinded, even if it was only a D4, to quickly get the upper hand and turn the tide of a small conflict quickly. Fireball, 20-foot radius, 1d6 damage per level. 20-foot radius means a 40-foot area, so you can take out a chunk of a military with a fireball. Lightning bolt, 1d6 per level damage. Let's look up lightning bolt. It's the only thing damage-wise that competes with fireball, but it might have a different use that would be very useful. Range 120 foot, area 120 foot line. If you could get to the flanks of a shield wall and cast lightning bolt, you could take out everybody in a 120 foot line. And that wouldn't necessarily mean everybody's dead, as much as everybody would take that damage. And at 5d6 damage starting, that's enough to kill most of the regular soldiers that would be in the military. So lightning bolt's definitely a good spell. If you did it another way, it becomes a 10-foot line, 60-foot long. You could put that on shields or give them one-use items. You got the stick. It's a one-use stick. Point the stick at the enemy, say this word. The stick will turn to ash, and this big bolt of lightning will shoot out, killing our enemies in front of you. Well, there you go. You do that, and all of a sudden this section of soldiers goes down. Displacement is good, but I don't see it being great unless you have, say, all your knights being displaced, or all your, everyone in the front line being displaced would be hilarious, because the walls could could attack each other, but where the displaced people aren't straight on, even though they see them straight on, they'd come at them like that. And then you could come back around and destroy them. Illusionary script. Invisibility sphere makes everyone within 2 feet invisible. I could see that maybe being useful. That's more of a hide, not, or more of a setup for ambush. That would be useful, using that for setups for ambush. Okay. Major image, silent image plus sound, smells, and thermal effects. Bunch of major images would be nice. You have your soldiers use these major images that create the illusion of a giant dragon. Each one a giant dragon. Now the enemy has to figure out if they really want to fight the dragon. Maybe make a morale check or run in fear of the creatures that are now on the battlefield, because major image also has sound, smell, and heat effects. So necromancy, gentle repose, preserves 1 corpse. That'd be good if you're trying to bring a hero home, but it wouldn't be good for the battlefield itself. Halt undead. Halt undead's good. Now let me look at it and make sure it's not a single undead. Up to 3 undead creatures. So the amount of targets is not as great as I expected, but the range is 100 feet plus 10 feet, so you're looking at 150 feet. You would have to have multiple castings of Hold Undead or multiple access to 1-use items of Hold Undead to really halt an enemy's undead army. Ray of Exhaustion makes subject exhausted. Wouldn't be great unless you're targeting the heroes of the battlefield, or you're targeting the like cavaliers, the ones that are doing the massive amounts of damage. Vampiric Touch. Touch deals 1d6 damage per 2 levels. Caster gains damage as temporary hit points. That'd be okay, but that's not a battlefield spell. Beast Shape 1. You take the form and some of the powers of a small or medium animal. The size doesn't make that a very beneficial spell. Blink. Blink would add a lot of chaos to the battle. You randomly vanish and reappear for 1 round per level. It's a better thing of displacement, in my opinion. But those two together would be hilarious as well. Flame Arrow. Arrow deals 1d6 fire damage. Fly. Subject flies at speed of 60 feet. That'd be great for scouting. That'd be great if you wanted to add aerial bombardments to the battlefield. Here's you a backpack filled with flasks of alchemist fire. Fly over the enemy forces here, open up the bag, and just drop all the flasks of alchemist fire from the height. Or dive bomb, do precise attacks. Come up from 300 feet, diving down until you're about 100 feet and drop in the flask. So you're almost directly on target, and the air won't be able to take it. The wind won't be able to take it in very many directions unless it's a strong wind. And then you can even go even closer if you were that worried about it. You could take up jugs with you. Take up those gallon clay jugs. Take 2 of those up with you that are filled with oil. Drop those. That would cover an area of the battlefield that then all you have to do is add fire to, and now you have sections of the battlefield on fire. You could take the jug thing one step further. Fill the jugs with, or the flasks thing one step further. Fill the flasks with beads of fireball from the fireball necklace. determine how many beads would be in a flask. I'd assume a whole necklace would fit in one flask. So you'd have that many beads, and you would drop the flask. Upon impact of the flask, that many beads detonates. So you're looking at a big blast in a small area. From there, you could go the next step up. Now, what about a wine bottle filled with them? Then you can go another step up. Now, what about a gallon jug filled with them? If you could have the strength, and if the fly would let you, you could carry a barrel full of oil. And what I mean by barrel, I'm looking at like an 80-gallon rain barrel filled with oil, and drop that from above. Whoever it hits, it's probably going to kill, but when it hits the ground, it should break open. And from there, you have a massive amount of oil you can light on fire. So the fly spell could really change how you can utilize the battlefield. And the more creative you get with the non-magical stuff added with the magical stuff, the more interesting everything becomes. Gaseous form, subject becomes insubstantial and can fly slowly. That's a retreating spell for the most part. It's not that great for a battlefield. Now, if you needed to get someplace, that could be a good spell. Say I need to get into the enemy's fortress, and I don't want to go through all these battlements or these battles. Well, take your strike force, give them gaseous form. They can go in through, say, the arrow slits, solidify on the inside, and then start fighting their way through the battlements. It'd be really bad if you had 25, 30, 50 guys all of a sudden appear on the inside of your battlements, able to take out your archers that were shooting the army that was trying to approach. So that could get very useful. Haste. If your army could be affected by haste for multiple rounds, you would have a big advantage. So let's look up haste. Haste. Ooh, I turned right to it. So this affects one creature per level. So minimum 5 creatures at the beginning of this. And it's only going to last for 5 rounds. 5 rounds of exchanges. That could add up. Especially if you're making twice the amount of attacks as the enemy for 5 rounds. Your AC is higher. So yeah, that'd be useful. How you would put it on multiple people would be an issue. You'd almost need to have the spellcasters there to do it. Or you need them to group up in groups of 5, or the guy behind them. If it's in normal battlefield walls, the guy behind them would cast it, and 2 people touching him and the 2 people he's touching in front are affected, type deal. But I could see that being thrown on a battlefield of really changing the tide. Keen Edge doubles the normal weapons threat range. That's useful for your skirmishers, but not for the whole battle, when your resources could be added to the other things we were discussing. Greater magic weapon, not that useful as a battlefield spell, unless you're fighting something that requires a magical weapon to hurt it. Secret page. Shrink item. Shrink item will be very useful. Object shrinks to 1/16 its size. I shrink a cannonball. It is now the size of a musket ball. I put a ring of dispel on the end of the musket. I fire the cannonball through it. It's fired as a musket ball, so as it exits the ring, it's now a cannonball again, already with velocity. I shrink a bunch of cannonballs. I load it to the blunderbuss. I put a bigger ring on the front of the blunderbuss, just hanging over it. When the shot comes through, now you have a series of cannonballs coming out through the battlefield. I take a ballista bolt. I reduce the size of the ballista bolt down to a crossbow bolt or an arrow. I shoot it through another ring. It now It comes to its full size and is doing that damage. That is how you can add a lot of siege devastation without a siege engine. Slow. If you could affect multiple of your enemies with slow, having it on a shield, being close to them, or waiting for the impact for them to hit the shield wall, you could then go and those that hit are under the effect of the slow spell, and then you activate your haste behind you on your guys. They get half an action per turn, and you get 2 actions per turn. You can do a lot of devastation. A lot of devastation. Water breathing. Subject can breathe underwater. That is not useful for a battlefield unless all your guys are affected by it, and then you're fighting in water. But your skirmishers, say your raiders, the ones that you want to send in to find stuff and find out stuff, give them that and then send them into the enemy stronghold. They can swim the moat without worrying about being sighted, because they can completely submerge under the moat. So that could be very useful. Those are all the 3rd level arcane spells in the core book. So that'll conclude the battlefield spells for the arcane. If you've seen any of these spells used, you had any ideas on how to use these spells, you see all the creativeness going into this, let me know. Put them in the comments below. Share with everybody. Let's expand what we know and what we can use for battlefield war magic as you pit fantasy in with the medieval style of warfare. Well, until we meet again.